Okay, and welcome again. I will speak a little bit louder. I got the feedback that I was a little bit on the quiet side. My apologies. Okay, well, welcome. We are now ready to proceed with the Corcoran City Council candidates. All the rules of this forum are the same. 2 minutes for the opening statement and 1 minute for questions. Again, we ask that there be no demonstration such as applause or booing of support or opposition to the candidates or their positions, and that all candidates be allowed their full time to get their point across. Again, we will thank the candidates with applause at the end of the evening. Also, remember that if you have questions to write, just please raise your hand, and a student will bring you a 3x5 card. And they can also pick it up too. Okay, and to get started on the Corcoran City Council candidates, they are Mr. Mike Keefe, Mr. Alan Schultz, and Mr. Jason Woody. We will begin tonight's forum by calling Mr. Mike Keefe to give his opening statement.
Well, thank you all for coming out. Thank you to the league for putting this on. Excuse me, let me try this.
Hello, I'm not used to talking to a microphone. Just want to say thank you everyone for coming out. Thank the league for hosting this tonight. My name is Mike Keefe, as she mentioned. Corcoran resident with my wife and 3 kids. Other family that lives in town as well. I don't have an agenda, I don't have a slogan. I listen to some of that with the mayoral stuff, and really my motivation is just being an active part of the community. My wife and family intend to live here for a very long time, and I want to give back to the community that we live in, be a part of it. I don't want to sit back and wait and watch as things develop and things evolve. I want to be part of that decision-making process and help guide what we talk about as rural all the time, and see that through and be a part of the community. Thank you all for coming out.
Okay, Mr. Alan Schultz, your opening statement.
Hi, my name is Alan Schultz, lifelong resident of Minnesota, and a resident of Corcoran for the last 6.5 years. For the last 4.5 years I've been volunteering with the Planning Commission here in town. I just kind of came from a long genetic line of public servants. Both my parents volunteered for 10 years in township, and I saw what impact you can have on a community. I, like most people, got passionate about the topic and started attending Planning Commission meetings, City Council meetings, got more involved, got more in depth on different topics, and saw how I could help citizens of Corcoran, and that's what my passion is. So that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters, the staff at the City of Corcoran for putting this on. It's a great event, and the honor of being involved 4 years ago, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, and Mr. Jason Woody, your opening statements, please.
Yeah, my name is Jason Woody. I'm running for City Council again. I see some new faces in here since I last ran 4 years ago. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Corcoran, started my working career at Lawn King, and then proceeded to work at the local gas station during the winter. I learned a lot of core values, a lot of stout intangibles of drive, integrity, determination, honesty, integrity, and I think those are crucial parts to a small town like Corcoran. I'm currently in commercial construction, and I've been doing that for over the last decade, and I've gotten a lot broader spectrum and knowledge of the whole ins and outs of development and construction and the inner workings of the city, and I think it's crucial that we don't get swallowed up and push development away, but also in the same token we need to develop in the proper manners and go through the proper channels, do committees, do the research, and make sure that we have proper infrastructure to handle the influx of populace that we're going to have via traffic, roads, and also in this technological world we live in, we need to update our infrastructure for high-speed internet and satellite options and cable options so we can take advantage of the meetings of the City Council via our smart devices or our home computers and TVs. Thank you.
Okay, and now for the first question, we will start with you, Mr. Alan Schultz. And it is, what passions for Corcoran has driven you to run for City Council?
Well, like I kind of said in my opening statement, we moved to the city 6.5 years ago. And when I moved in East Corcoran, there really wasn't any development going on. And about a year or so into that, the Lennar community, Ravinia started, and a direct impact on my neighborhood since I'm one house away from the development of Lennar. So that really what got me passionate into Corcoran city government and seeing how the impact is on neighbors. You know, there's a lot of development going on. There's going to be a lot of development continuing to go on with water and sewer, the availability of land for growth. It's how we manage that growth and keep the feeling that brought us to this town that's really important to me.
Okay, and now Mr. Jason Woody.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, of course. What passions for Corcoran has driven you to run for City Council?
As I briefly stated, I've enjoyed being able to have the honor and opportunity to grow up in Corcoran and dealing with the core values that I was raised with. And I think it's imperative for the future, and especially youth in this world, that we maintain that integrity and those values while developing as well and while growing and maturing as a city and the community, and not losing that mindset of what makes Corcoran Corcoran.
Okay, and go ahead, Mr. Mike Keefe.
You know, for me, I look at this and I see a lot of development happening in the eastern edge of Corcoran, and I see it's inevitable. Suburban areas are pushing out, and we need to control that. We continue to talk, and I said it earlier, we're talking about rural and what Corcoran is and those core values. We want to maintain that. My family lives here, and I want to see this community grow over the next 30, 40 years while I'm living here, while my kids are living here, for future families to come. We don't want to lose what Corcoran is and still learn to accept the inevitable that's going to happen with the suburban sprawl.
Okay, and the next question, we will begin with Jason Woody, and it is, how can police and fire services be more efficiently and effectively organized to provide to our community?
I don't see them as being inefficient or ineffective. I think to answer that question properly, you're going to have to defer it to people that have more knowledge of the issues at hand and more knowledge of the inner workings of fire and rescue services and health and human services here. I think just having a solid plan as to the direction we want to go and to the magnitude of how we're going to bring in fire and police coverage in an effective manner without sacrificing the safety and the security of the citizens.
Okay, let's go ahead, Mr. Mike Keefe.
Could you repeat that?
Of course. How can police and fire services be more efficiently and effectively organized to provide to our community?
This is a challenging question. With a small community, let's start with fire. Fire services right now are contracted out. We're at the cusp of growth right now where we need to start looking at bringing fire services into the city of Corcoran, having our own fire stations, starting to look at water towers. Now that's infrastructure that we need to spend money on. So the challenges are, where do we come up with the money to do that? We're at the point now where we're doing a fire service study to answer those questions, find out where the funding can come from, and I really think that that's the next step for the community in improving fire services. Now, as much as I love Corcoran PD, and I think they do a wonderful job, statistics I believe show that per capita, we have less police officers in the city than the majority of the cities in the Twin Cities metro area. So it might seem like our police force is out and about, but it's really less than most communities. Adding the detective position is a step in the right direction. We added a police canine, that's a step in the right direction. I think we're doing a great job, but there's definitely room for growth.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mike as far as it goes with the fire. We have Loretto and Hanover, Rogers, and then we're going to get calls. If we have calls, Maple Grove's going to help respond. Plymouth will respond with us. So I don't really see an inefficiency with fire. It's a challenge because our fire department's on the outside of the city, and if there's a fire in the inside of the city, there's a response time issue. But generally they've been pretty good with that, and we have to rely on the expertise of those fire units to come in, and we'll continue to work with them to improve the service. And I mean, we've left fire departments, no longer use Hamel because of issues, and we'll continue to look to improve. As far as police go, my experience with the police department in Corcoran has been really responsive and good to the needs of the community. If you ever engage with them, they're very professional and very friendly to deal with, so I think they do a good job.
Okay, perfect. And then we will go ahead and we'll get started with you, Mike Keith. And it is, do you feel Corcoran needs a K-9 unit?
This is a pretty easy answer after I've seen what he's been able to do. He is wonderful to have. Not only, from what he's brought to drugs and enforcement in our community, being able to go out and do that, I was surprised at how much community interaction and just the presence he has at community events and bolstering the community itself. I think it's great. I questioned it at first. It was a dramatic cost. A dog, that's a lot of money to spend on a K-9 unit for a community like this, but I think that the return from having Zeke around is going to be great.
Okay, and then let's go with you, Mr. Alan Schultz.
Yeah, I think the use of the K-9 unit is a great addition to the police department. I don't think any of the police officers have a nose like a dog does, and when they do, then we can think about getting rid of the dog. But as far as right now, they're going to do a great job with search and rescue, or getting an intruder inside of a building versus risking someone else's life, or drug searches or whatnot. I think it's a really good addition to the community.
Okay, and go ahead, Mr. Jason Modi.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad decision to make. I've read a little bit about it in the paper and the Kroger News, and it seems to be he's a rather effective officer of the law, if you will. I think he brings, Zeke that is, I think he brings a heightened sense of safety and security and integrity to the city. What I was reading about in the paper and the police reports, it seems like he does a pretty legitimate and effective job at exposing drugs in this community and helping rid this community of that problem. So I'm in agreement.
Okay, and just so you know, I will be potentially moving orders around in a way that can be a little confusing, so I'll be telling you the order before I ask the next question. So this one, the order will be Mr. Jason Woody, and then Mr. Mike Keith, and then Mr. Alan Schultz. Okay, and for the question itself, it is what unique skills or talent will you bring to the City Council that differentiate you?
Well, I'm a pretty vibrant, energetic, and boisterous individuul. I did rather well in high school, both during and post high school. I've been involved in a lot of multi-million-dollar commercial construction projects and been in charge of a couple of dozen individuals. Been able to overcome language barriers. There's not much for labor force out there now, so we outsource to different regions of the city, state, country, and the globe. And I was able to complete the project, my portion of it, on time and under budget, while dealing with people from Mexico, Honduras, southeastern Chile, and Guatemala. So there was quite the language barrier, but through teamwork and drive and perseverance, the team came together and we got it done.
Okay, and go ahead, Mr. Mike Keith.
Unique skills and talents I feel I can bring. I have, prior to serving in Corcoran on the City Council, I worked on the Planning Commission in Elk River, so I have experience from that. My day-to-day job is sales manager in a distribution company working in the construction field where I manage about 30 employees. A question came up during the mayoral debate that there was a budget. I work with budgets all the time. National sales, traveling all over the country, so I get experience to a lot of high-level decision-making, budget processes, and et cetera. I think a lot of that pertains to aspects of the city and decision-making processes. So my experience in my work adds to decision-making in the city.
Okay, and Mr. Alan Schultz.
I've worked 22 years in the financial services industry, and what I do on a day-to-day basis is analyze contracts. And I look for details in all those contracts and question, well, why are we doing this? Are we doing the right thing? Are we paying the right amount? Are we collecting the right amount from the people that owes us money? I also manage a staff of people on my team, and I've done that for the last probably 20 years. So very budget oriented. I have to do budget every year, making sure that expenses fit within the realm of the company, and make sure that I'm getting the most out of my staff for that. So I bring a lot of analytical skills, working with different parts of the company that I work with, different, I'd say personalities, and I make sure I bring those personalities together to bring the best to the organization.
And for the next question, the order will be Mr. Alan Schultz, then Mr. Mike Keefe, and then Mr. Jason Woody. So for the question, it is, what are your ideas about creating more jobs in Corcoran?
Good question. Jobs is a really good thing for Corcoran, and what we need is more commercial growth. Commercial growth to bring those jobs, commercial growth to diversify our tax base, shift the burden of taxes off the residents of Corcoran. Like the mayor said, we get better bang for our buck and our tax dollars from commercial than we do from residential. There's less services demanded by commercial than residential. And so I want to see more growth in the commercial sector, more job opportunities here. I mean, we have more jobs out there than we have people for in the greater metro, but we don't have the jobs in Corcoran, and it would be nice if people had a place to go to find work within the town versus having to travel outside of the city to look for jobs.
Okay. And Mr. Mike Keefe?
It's a tough question. Small community, one thing that I look at with the existing businesses in this community, we recently, over the last year or so, have allowed them to hook up to sewer and water services, which hopefully adds to efficiencies within those existing organizations and allows them opportunities to grow the businesses themselves, therefore growing our commercial tax base. Additionally, one thing we've worked towards on the city council with city staff is allowing them to have better efficiencies and higher levels of staffing, because we have a wonderful city administrator and he gets to go out and solicit businesses for our zone commercial districts. That was something that we lacked in many years past. We didn't have somebody who could go out and meet with businesses and offer what the city has and say, hey, we've got this great property, why don't you look at putting a business here? We didn't have that. Some of the other challenges we have are city infrastructure. In areas where we don't have sewer and water, businesses still have to hook up to a septic system or such. So we've got to do some infrastructure upgrades and continue to go out and find companies to come in here.
Okay, and Mr. Jason Woody?
I agree with the two gentlemen sitting next to me. We need to do something to promote more business, more work, bringing people here and allowing people that live here to find jobs in close proximity. As to exactly what that all pertains to, is it commercial? Is it commercial? Is it residential? Is it industrial? Is it medical? I mean, is it taking advantage of green programs and being a green city? I don't exactly know, but we do have to take advantage of this new infrastructure that we have in downtown Corcoran, water and sewer, and try to promote people to want to come out here, to want to invest in Corcoran. And as Mr. Schultz said, it would help alleviate the taxpayers' burden. I believe we need to do some research and find the greatest solution to bringing more commercial development to Corcoran.
Okay, and then for the next question, the order will be Mr. Jason Woody, then Mr. Alan Schultz, and then Mr. Mike Keefe. So the question is, what is your stand on paving collector roads, and how do you plan on funding road improvements?
That's a pretty tough question. That's been a hot topic and a hot debate even 4 years ago when I was running, and it seems to create a lot of heartburn amongst different individuals here. We do need to pave some roads. I believe Mr. Thomas was saying Larkin Road was the highest trafficked dirt road we have, and that's why we're starting to resurface roads like that. And I also noticed Rolling Hills was getting resurfaced as well. That's a definite shortcut from 55 to Corcoran. So I think we have to do a research and get with committees and find out, prioritize which collector roads, which dirt roads need to get paved in which order and why.
Okay, and same question, Mr. Alan Schultz.
Yeah, paving roads is a tough subject in the city of Corcoran. I can't really support paving roads if you don't have the support of the people that are living on that road. It's a huge tax burden to put on somebody, to ask them to fund an assessment that's, they're not going to get the value from it. So, I understand there's a lot of traffic on our roads right now. We should be looking at, when we do development, that it doesn't put additional burden on our roads. We looked at an event center ordinance that was recommended by Planning Commission only to be on blacktop roads, and City Council decided to open up to gravel roads. Well, that's more burden on gravel roads when now we have a huge cost on that. So we need to be thinking long-term with everything we do want an impact on our roads. And it's a tough subject, but if there's not money there and support from the community, I can't really support it either.
Okay, and go ahead, Mr. Menke.
Well, as I've always stood on this, I support paving gravel collector roads because in my opinion, and as many of people in the audience I've talked to, it's almost past the time. We need to get to this point within our organization to pave gravel collector roads. As the community continues to develop, and it is already, the infrastructure is not there. It's going to get worse, and the costs are going to continue to rise, and it's going to be harder and harder to finance it. We've kicked around in the council for the last 4 years how to fund this, and we've come up with some good ideas and some not so good ideas. One idea we've talked about is we have continued building permit revenue and whether or not we can spend that on subsidizing paving gravel collector roads. Some are for it, some aren't. There's different creative methods for doing this, and I'm not sure what the funding mechanism is, but all in all, I think that it's going to continue to get worse if we don't do it sooner than later. Thank you.
Okay. And for the next question, the order will be Mr. Mike Keefe, then Mr. Jason Woody, and then Mr. Alan Schultz. And the question is, would you excuse yourself from any action that would benefit you?
It's a challenging one. Generally, you have to defer this to the city attorney to find out if you should be precluded from it, so that would be the first question you'd want to ask. In general, the hard part about this is if it's a tax implication, you're affecting everyone. Inadvertently, you could be affecting yourself by any decision that's going to raise your taxes. So the answer is yes, if it's going to be something that if you're going to paint your house as blue or red and it's an easy one to get out of it, then yes. But I also look at it sometimes, if you're making a decision that affects the greater good, are you willing to make and accept that decision on your own behalf? And if you can't say yes, then you shouldn't be making that decision for everyone else. If you can say yes in your own right, then you can say yes to the general public. That's kind of how I've looked at it, and I've had to make that decision in the past.
Okay, and Mr. Jason Woody.
I believe, legal counsel will be the main stepping stone and the first step in the process. You have to, as long as it's a benefit of the community and the large majority, a large percentage of the community benefits from it, yes, I do believe. Just as long as you don't have some special agenda or it just directly solely benefits you at the cost of the taxpayers. And again, I think you could defer it to the necessary officials that work for the city of this local government and consult with them and try to come up with the appropriate solution for the greater good of the community.
Ms. Alan Schultz.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with both of the candidates on if there's something that personally affects you, you need to take it to legal counsel to get a judgment on it first. But to be honest with you, everything we talk about benefits somebody and benefits each of us in some way. But I can tell you one thing that probably sets me apart from a lot of people is I live in a developed community. There isn't a whole lot that's going to benefit me when we talk about paving collector roads or building rights or anything like that effect. So I'm a little different in a lot of cases than some of the other candidates we've had in the past.
Okay, And the next question, the order will be Mr. Alan Schultz, then Mr. Mike Keefe, and then Mr. Jason Woody. And the question is, how will you work with the Met Council to develop corporate?
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't really care for the Met Council, to be honest with you, just for the simple fact that they're a taxing authority that has implications where we can't vote any of those people out the way it's currently structured. So you have no say in who's on the Met Council and what they do. But working in the city of Corcoran, the Met Council provides us many benefits when it comes to roads and sewer and water and access to that. So without the Met Council, we would have no sewer or water. We would have, if we had it, we would pay way more to develop it ourselves. We wouldn't have the opportunities for people that want to sell their land and develop their land to do that, because there would not be people out there looking to buy that land.
Okay, Mr. Mike Keefe?
Sometimes I feel like with regard to the Met Council, we're on an island out here. We're not large enough, we don't have big enough issues like Maple Grove and other cities around us, but I would like to see us petition the Met Council to get better services, get better aid, more funding. We have needs, we're at that cusp, and they kind of just leave us alone. And like Mr. Schultz said, you know, they have tax capabilities, but we don't really get any decision-making power with them. So we can go and plead our case to them, but they don't always like to help us. You know, we've asked them for help with roads, we've asked them for help with infrastructure, and it falls on deaf ears. So somehow we need to escalate that and get their attention out here.
Okay, and Mr. Jason Woody?
I happen to agree with Mr. Schultz on this one. I'm not a huge fan of the Met Council. I mean, they kind of got their own agenda, and they're appointed by government, and they're not elected by citizens of any community, really. They definitely give us some options and kind of push ideas as to what we or other cities across the state should do without much input from the cities. I would like to see, if they're going to be involved with us, I'd like to see them offer options or solutions of how we can get high-speed internet, we can get cable, we can update our roads. With all this development going, and we got to update our roads to handle the influx of populace of traffic. And I think that in cooperation with the Met Council, whether you like them or not, going through the proper channels and doing research and going, you know, maintaining a committee relationship, you can find a successful solution.
Okay, and the next question, the order will be Mr. Jason Woody, then Mr. Alan Schultz, and then Mr. Mike Keefe. The question itself is, what areas does the city do well, and what kind of change does Corcoran deserve?
The city does well with keeping the community looking the way it does, feeling the way it does. It's not hard to go out and find that warm family feeling, you know, like it was back in the Andrew Griffith Show in Mayberry. I think that's crucial to keeping this going the direction we need to go.
Okay, Mr. Alan Schultz.
Can you repeat the second part?
It would be, what kind of change does Corcoran deserve?
Well, what we do well, I'd have to differ with the one mayoral candidate. I think we do a very well job of listening to the community when they come in. I've been on the Planning Commission for 4.5 years, and the public forum is always open. You can come in and talk about anything that's not on the agenda. You can always reach out to anyone on the council or anyone on the Planning Commission. You know, in the 4.5 years, nobody's come to me and brought anything, but I've gone to people and asked their opinions on things. Same with City Council. I mean, you might not get the decision you like, but there is an open forum and there is an opportunity to raise questions, and they don't have to be on the topic. So I think we do that very well. And I moved up here from Apple Valley. If you ever watched any of their meetings out in large city, they're very structured and people don't get the opportunity to talk like they do. What we deserve for change is we deserve the ability to grow our commercial so we can go.
Thank you.
What if I could just elaborate 1 second on that, what I meant by developing our commercial is so that we bring in more jobs, we bring in more services for our community.
Mr. Van Keep.
You know, some people might not agree with this, but I think actually in the last 4 years that I've seen in being involved in corporate, financially, the opinion is that we have a large amount of debt, and some of that was there many, many years ago. We're actually heading in the right direction. Our ratings, bonding, it's all better. Our financial reserves are improving. Everything is heading in the right direction. I really think that this organization financially is responsible in making good decisions. Tax base is going up, tax rates are going down. There's a lot of good things that the general public doesn't always see. And I would say that financially, I think they're doing a good job. As far as the changes, you know, we talked about civility earlier, and that kind of hit me because some of the least civil things I've seen were from that camp. So that was pretty hard for me to deal with. I didn't join the city council to walk away every night feeling like this wasn't a civil community. And generally, that's not how I feel. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, the order will be Mr. Mike Keith, Mr. Alan Schultz, and Mike Keith, Mr. Jason Woody, then Mr. Alan Schultz. And it is, I'd like to see more civility in politics. How would you promote that goal?
Interesting. You know, generally, in my experience with the city, it is extremely civil. I look out there and I see many of the same faces all the time, and we are neighbors. My phone number is public knowledge. If you want to talk about something, call me. We can have a civil conversation. I'll buy you coffee. It's a very tight-knit community. And I found that the civility question to be odd from my perspective because generally it is extremely civil. We're all neighbors. It's 5,500 people here. And you walk out your front door and you see people you know. And, you know, I just think it's a great place. I don't think there's a great civility issue. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Jason Woody?
Yeah, I have to agree with him as well. I don't think there's much of a civility issue here. It seems like there is an open door policy, whether it's with city government or your local convenience stores or your local businesses around town. It's kind of a unique city we live in because it is where everybody knows everybody. We don't quite borrow cups of sugar from one another, but if someone's loved one is in the hospital or gets hurt, it's kind of common knowledge around the city. And I think that's one of the very important ideals about corporate that we keep, because that's what makes us who we are. So I don't see any issues with it.
Okay, and then Mr. Alan Schultz.
Yeah, that question kind of surprised me as well. I mean, there's faces out here that I've seen at city council meetings time and time again that have issues with the city, and those, while they may get heated at times, it's always been respectful from both sides of the community, whether it's a city council member, mayor, or a